Well, I told you I'd be back, and I am back. It is draft night. It was draft night. Another episode of Emerald City Sportscast After Dark. This is becoming a habit. I'm just trying to become more and more like Jason Churchill with each passing day. I'm not going to let Jason know I made that reference. We'll find out if he listens to the show still. We'll see if he reaches out to me and acknowledges that he got that shout out. The Seahawks do a very un-Seahawky thing tonight. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what happened in the first round, who they selected, what I think of the player, what others think of that player, what it means for the franchise, and what comes next. And yes, I will do another live mock draft. My apologies to those who listened on Monday or watched, because I made an adjustment to the settings in my soundboard and did not work out. And so the stream that went out over YouTube and Facebook on video did not include audio, which, regardless of what you think about whether or not I have a face for radio or streaming, I think my shows are a lot more interesting when you can hear me talk than when you can just see me and my lips moving. So the Seahawks selecting 9th in the first round this year in the NFL draft because of the trade, obviously, of Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. So we inherit the Broncos' number 9 pick. As we worked through some scenarios over the last couple of weeks with some mock drafts, and as you looked at the mock drafts that were out there were a couple of prevailing themes and a lot of reporting happening in the last few days. Most of the speculation centered around the Seahawks taking a cornerstone player at either left tackle in a very strong upper end of the class, or edge rusher, pass rusher, someone to hunt the quarterback. And then there was some late momentum for Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU, a cornerback. And we all know that the Seahawks don't typically like to take cornerbacks high, but a lot of that's situational too. We're going to talk about situational things here tonight. So when it comes to the draft, what have we heard for the last few years about the Seahawks, John Schneider, Pete Carroll, the brain trust of the Seahawks? Can't draft as well as they used to. Don't draft as well as they used to. Flaws in their process. And in particular, don't draft well in the first round or with their early picks. Well, you know what? They haven't had the benefit of high picks in 10 years. Literally 10 years. 2012 was the last time they had a pick this high. In 2010, it's been 12 years. The first year that John Carroll, should we just call them that? John Schneider and Pete Carroll were in charge of the Seahawks. They had 2 picks in the top 15, and they took Russell Okung and Earl Thomas. Russell Okung became a cornerstone left tackle. That was their first pick together with the Seahawks. After that year, they selected at or near the end of the first round, traded out of the first round many times, traded first-round picks for other players many times, selected players that didn't work out. But the hit rate for players at the end of the first round is much lower than it's, put it this way, it's harder to screw it up in the top 10. And it was interesting leading up to this draft. I had a lot of discussions about it. And there was still this prevailing thought in Seahawk fandom that somehow they were going to throw some crazy curveball at us at 9 or after they trade down that nobody could see coming. And I get it, but that was based on decisions that were made with later picks. Many of those years, and John Schneider after drafts will be much more transparent about this kind of stuff. There were years the Seahawks were drafting in the mid to late 20s where they would admit later they only had 12, 15, 16, 17 first-round grades on guys. And that would dictate, and that would enter into their thought process about what to do with those picks. Well, tonight they sat at number 9. And for all of the speculation that because it's his history, John Schneider would look to move down in this draft, It's a fourth year in a row now that they've stayed put and taken their first pick. And they're at number 9. As it was unfolding, you could see it working a certain way. In almost all of the mock drafts over the last couple of weeks, the top 3 offensive tackles, and at that range of the draft, we're talking left tackles, we're almost always gone. Ekonwu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross. So the discussion became, how do you feel about Trevor Penning, the Northern Iowa kid, known as a nasty mauler in the run game? Only gave up 1 pressure last year, but at a lower level. There were some questions about his pass sets and his lateral movement skills. And there was some disagreement about whether or not Penning would be a reach at number 9, whether he belonged in the teens. He might make more sense if the Seahawks traded down. And indeed, I think he went 18th today. But there were reports the Seahawks liked Penning. Some people reported that the Seahawks loved Penning. But that seemed like a steep price to pay at 9. Well, guess what? The top of the draft went a little differently than we expected, with an emphasis on edge rushers and 2 corners going, and then some receiver action. So it left one of the top 3 left tackles there at number 9. And the Seahawks, I said they did an un-Seahawky thing. They did the thing that we've wanted them to do for years and years and years. And this doesn't just apply to the first round. There have been many times over the last 10 years in the second, third, fourth round, I'll be on my phone with Eric Briggs, friend of the show, good old friend of mine, or somebody else, all my draft buddies. And we always like to try to call the pick. Here's who I want. Say this name. And if you're a real geek like me, you even watch the lips of Roger Goodell or whoever it is announcing the pick at the time, and you try to read their lips, hoping that it'll start to make the first syllable of the first name of the player that you want. Hey, by the way, everybody, I'd like to introduce a new regular to the show and a member of the if you're watching the stream, a new member of the Emerald City Sportscast family and my family, Butch. So I don't know if you can see him on the back of my chair. Got a new buddy, got a new roommate. He's 8 weeks old, going on 9 weeks old now. He's a kitten. You'll probably hear him. He's very interested in what's happening right now. This will make for some really, really good YouTube and streaming. He may pipe in here and give his opinion on the pick as well. Where was I? So we're talking about Trevor Penning. And the Seahawks doing a very unusual thing. Oh, this is okay. So that's Butch, everybody. And yes, named in honor of my love and affiliation with Washington State University and Butch the Cougar. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, you're on the show. What do you got to say? The Seahawks stayed put, let the draft come to them, and took the best player on the board and the best player at a major, impactful position of need. They just did that. They just did the thing that we always want them to do, and they never seem to. What's the term that we hear the most, or we've said to each other the most over the last 2 years? They get too cute, or they overthink something. They didn't overthink it this time. Charles Cross, Mississippi State, left tackle, was on the board, and they took him at a major position of need, especially when you're talking about a rebuild. And you're talking about at some point going with a young quarterback. But even if you don't, even if Drew Lock becomes the answer, becomes the guy that some people thought he could be coming out of Missouri, or if it's a guy that you draft next year, or if it's a guy that we take tomorrow, only one quarterback taken in the first round, Kenny Pickett going to Pittsburgh at 20. Malik Willis is still on the board. Desmond Ridder, who's had many conversations with the Seahawks, still on the board. Matt Corral has been attached to the Seahawks. Sam Howell's been attached to the Seahawks. Maybe they take one of those guys. Maybe they don't. We'll talk about that in a minute. But even if you're looking ahead to next year, and Pete Carroll's draft clue today on Twitter was Macklemore's next year, you have to solidify pass protection. And I'm not going to get into the discussion of how ironic it is that we used the pick acquired for Russell Wilson, who infamously never had enough pass protection to take a pass protector. Because that becomes a discussion about opportunity, and it also becomes a discussion about Russell Wilson and his decision-making. They stay put and they take Charles Cross. Who is Charles Cross? 6'5", 307-pound left tackle, played in that Mike Leach air raid system that we watched for 7 years at Washington State University. We watched at Texas Tech before that. 21 years old, youngest offensive tackle prospect in this draft. So hasn't really even started or finished developing physically. 6'5", 307. Started for the last 2 years at Mississippi State. Here's just, I pulled a couple of things from people that I really respect in the scouting media world. From the Ringers draft guide. There he is. There he is. Say hi, Butch. He's exploring all the equipment. So let's hope that I don't go off the air. Danny Kelly. Remember him? Used to be the lead editor at Field Goals and cover the Seahawks. Here's a couple of things he says about Charles Cross. Nimble, athletic left tackle, excels when pass blocking on an island, an ascending player with hand-fighting skills and smooth footwork. Has what every team in the NFL needs, pass blocking skills. Has the traits to develop into a high-level blindside protector. He's raw as a run blocker, which in the air raid you would expect. That's usually the knock on guys coming out of that system. It was the knock on Andre Dillard, yet to establish himself with the Eagles. 80% of his snaps the last 2 years have been pass protection snaps. Raw as a run blocker may not be a great fit with a downhill run-heavy scheme. Well, the Seahawks are transitioning more to that outside zone Ram scheme under Shane Waldron. Don't know if you can call him a downhill run-heavy scheme before. But here's the thing. I have seen enough tape on him and enough opinions about him that he's different from other air raid guys. When given the opportunity to run block, he seeks guys out. He's physical. He gets good position. He likes to hit, and he gets to the second level. Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Overall, Cross lacks ideal bulk and power, especially in the run game, but he processes things quickly, shows outstanding hand exchange and movement patterns in pass protection. He projects as an NFL starter with Pro Bowl level talent thanks to his pass blocking. There are multiple mentions of Cross's lean frame. He can add weight. But he's 21 years old, not even 21 and a half, 21.4 years old on draft day. Seahawks will get some more weight on him. Tony Pauline, Pro Football Network, a little more bullish on him. Cross is a fluid, athletic offensive tackle who showed improvement in his game and comes with a large upside. Terrific pass protector who's still rough around the edges. Cross must consistently block with proper fundamentals and learn to come out of a three-point stance. While he has the ability to become a tremendous starting left tackle, he also possesses a large amount of downside to his game and is the riskiest of the top offensive tackles in this year's draft. That was the most negative scouting report I could find anywhere about Charles Cross. Jeff Schwartz on Twitter, former longtime outstanding NFL offensive lineman, said the Seahawks are getting a great one. Outstanding pass protector. I haven't completely parsed Schneider and Carroll's comments from their press conference after the first round tonight. I wanted to get into this, but I saw enough of theirs, and Schneider referred to him as a pillar. This is a foundational piece to a rebuild that they're not admitting is a rebuild. You're talking about a 10-year, long-time left tackle, one of the most obvious glaring needs on this roster. Could they bring Dwayne Brown back? Yes. Have they talked to him about it? Yes. Is he willing to come back? Yes. He won't now. for the money that he's still going to want. Granted, the opportunity might not be out there for him now after the draft. He's not coming back to the Seahawks. The left tackle spot next year will be Charles Cross competing with Stone Forsythe, 6th-round pick out of Florida last year. And Forsythe early on might actually have the edge. Remember when he came out? What was the scouting report on him? Played in a spread system, didn't run block enough, raw in the run game, but as a pass protector could start as a rookie and be solid right now. There's no guarantee Charles Cross is the opening day starter. Stone Forsythe is going to make his presence felt. And we'll see how that works itself out. But the Seahawks did the right thing. They took the right player at the right spot. They didn't get cute, move down, maybe go with Penning, try to add some more spots. They took a guy that almost everyone believes has Pro Bowl. If not, I've seen some scouting reports that say he has all-pro talent. In fact, the Pro Football Network, even though Tony Pauline was pretty critical or cautious in his praise of Charles Cross there, they had him rated as a 91.5 on their scale and an all-pro ability rating. Really excited about this pick. And what it does is it checks off one major need in this draft that doesn't need to be worried about now. Because they took a player that there should be no questions about. This isn't Jermaine Ifedi. This isn't take your pick of guys they've taken in the last few years that you just don't know until they get to camp. You just don't know until they get on the field. This is a guy that's going to play for a long time at left tackle and provide excellent pass protection for whoever ends up being the quarterback. What you're trying to do with the roster this year, regardless of whether Drew Lock is a starting quarterback or they go out and get Baker Mayfield on Saturday, and we'll get to that in a minute. In 2023, even if one of those scenarios comes to fruition, they're going to dip into that outstanding quarterback class next year. I truly believe. I've said it before, and now it looks even more evident. I truly believe that that's the plan. And it's still the plan, even if they take Desmond Ridder tomorrow, Sam Howell, Matt Corral. Those are the guys that you build around. And so what do? You try to put them into the best situation you can. One of the best things you can do is put a good offensive line in front of them. They're solid at the guards. There's promise in Jake Kern at right tackle and what he showed last year, although I still think they'll address that in this draft. They signed a solid center, Austin Blythe, who has experience in this scheme, although I still think they'll address center later in this draft. But now they've locked down left tackle for years. Now, what that does is it sets them up for the rest of the draft to, again, hopefully let the draft come to them. It's a deep draft. We've heard that a lot. It's a deep draft. Those second, third, fourth round picks are gold, which is why I had hoped to see them trade down a few spots, pick up an extra pick in that sweet spot. But when a guy like Cross is there, you don't do that. If he had been gone, I would have been perfectly fine with them trading down, taking Penning, and using that extra pick later. Cannot tell you how excited I am. I came home to watch the DVR replay of the first round because I had to work during it. And as you know, Daniel Jeremiah was showing the highlights and talking about Charles Cross, got goosebumps. This is a franchise game-changing type pick. I would go so far as to say anyone in Seahawks fandom out there who wants to be critical of this particular pick is either so cynical that they're broken or they just don't know what they're talking about. So what does this do to set up the rest of the draft? Well, a lot of these mock draft simulators, and tonight we're going to use the one from Pro Football Network. It does offer trades, but I also like their big board. And funny thing about the first round, right? What have we heard the last couple of weeks? We heard all this talk about how crazy it was going to be. And that it was one of the most unpredictable first rounds in years. And yet, to me, what the first round ended up looking like is pretty much the consensus of what all the mock drafts from the experts have shown the last few weeks. Pretty much chalk. Interesting. So a lot of these simulators and the Pro Football Network one does as well. They update after the first round. And so I've already started this one. Let's get the screen share going. Let's switch some things around here, first of all. I don't always do this enough during the show. Let's throw that one up there. And then let's go screen share. But I want to take it a little bigger so you can see the whole screen. And so it's got the first round loaded in, and then we've went ahead with the second round. And we're going to see how it falls. Now, one of the guys right off the bat, Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, edge, guy we've talked about, guy that I took in one of my mocks last week, gone to the New York Giants at 36. Matt Corral, also gone at 37. Troy Anderson, a guy that I took in one of my mocks on Monday, a guy I really liked, linebacker out of Montana State, higher than I expected, gone. So what do we have left? And what are our priorities, first of all? Have to get an edge player, a pass rusher, have to get a corner. Have to fill those two spots. Would like to get a long-term answer at center. Would like to get a long-term answer at right tackle, but I'm pretty high on Jake Curran. And would like to get a running back because we just don't know. Rashad Penny had the great 5-game stretch. Don't know if he can stay healthy. Only on a 1-year deal. And Chris Carson, don't know if he's ever going to suit up again for the Seahawks. So what does the board look like now? Malik, this is where it gets interesting. I would have been all in and in favor of taking a quarterback in the second, third round if they had added another pick. I don't like the idea now. It's tempting, though. Malik Willis is still on the board. You talk about that upside, that arm, that athleticism. There are reports that the Seahawks like Malik Willis a lot. They also like Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, have had many conversations with him. Ridder said he's talked to the Seahawks a lot. Sam Howell, best deep ball thrower in the draft after Willis. Really tempted to give the Seahawks a quarterback here, and they just might. But I'm not going to, because I think the Charles Cross pick makes it even more evident that they're building for the future. And then I have another thing that we're going to talk about here in the fourth round. So we're going to ignore the quarterbacks right now. I really want to look at edge. David Ojabo is extremely interesting to me. He's a kid out of Michigan, 1-year wonder, had an incredible year, explosive edge rusher, elite athleticism, tore his Achilles during his pro day. So you're taking this kid for the future. Maybe that fits in with Pete Carroll's draft clue, right? Next year, maybe the Seahawks think they're in a position where they can take David Ojabo, sit on him for a year, could be available at the end of the year, and take him for 2023. Won't be surprised if they do that. I'm not going to do it here because I want to see a kid on the field this year. And I like Boye Mafe out of Minnesota almost as much. 6'3", 261, explosive athlete coming off the edge. Let's get our young edge rusher to pair with Darrell Taylor. And let's get him now. Washington Commanders are offering us a trade where we move down 6 spots from 41 to 47, but we move up from 229, our 7th rounder, up to 98. It's interesting. We have another offer. The Jets want us to move down to 101. That's too far. I'm going to reject that. I'm going to take this offer from the Commanders. I like trades like this. It gets us more into the sweet spot of what is supposed to be a very, very deep draft. We're going to accept that. So we're going to move down to 47. Another offer from the Steelers to move down to 52 again and pick up 138. I think there's enough depth on this board to do that. And there aren't any guys that I have to have. Okay, Butch. Love you. All right. So I'm going to take that one too. And then just for the sake of, I'm just not going to take any more trades. So now we're sitting at 52, and look at this big board. Oh, this is interesting. Breece Hall, best running back in the draft, sitting right there. Roger McCreary, not the longest old typical Seahawk. I think he's 5'11", 5'11" to 190 out of Auburn, but an outstanding press man cover corner. DeMarvin Leal, guy that can play inside and outside in a 3-4 front. Kyler Gordon, corner, Washington. Husky fans are going to know this guy. 5'11" and 194. Listed on Feldman's freak list in the 2021 offseason. Reportedly has a 42.5-inch vertical and a pro agility time of 3.87 in the three cone. Extremely explosive, twitchy athlete, accelerates quickly, fluid mover, smooth hips. Kyler Gordon was projected to go much higher than this. This could be your long-term answer at corner. Let's look at linebacker, because with the shift to a 3-4, there's going to be needs at outside linebacker. None of the guys I like are still there. Channing Tindall is ranked number 102 on their board. Really intriguing, super fast sideline to sideline guy out of Georgia. We've got 72 and 98 coming up. He could still be available there. I'm going to go Kyler Gordon. Let's get a potential long-term starting cornerback. And actually, he could start this year if Trey Brown isn't fully recovered from that patella tendon injury, or it holds him back in any way, which would give you two former UW Husky starting corners with Sidney Jones on the other side. We're going to reject all the trades now. Let's go back and just see where we're at with running back. Okay, I can't wait any longer. I don't see any scenario where this would happen. This isn't realistic. Breece Hall is not going to be there at 72. So I can't even consider that. It's just not going to happen. There's no questions about this kid's character or his health. He's a 3-down, big-time franchise-type running back. So I'm not going to consider him there. Wide receiver is a different story. If you want to look at a skill position, because I think the drop-off after David Bell is pretty severe. But David Bell is a guy I can get excited about. He's 6 foot 212. Doesn't have elite speed or quickness, but has the best release of anyone in this class from the tape I've seen. Almost looks David Baldwin-esque, or Doug Baldwin-esque in his releases. So let's consider him. But I also want to take a look at the offensive lineman again. Bernard Raymond. Some people think he's a left tackle. I think he's more suited at right tackle. The former rugby player, ranked 55th on Pro Football Network's board, still there at 72. 6'6", 303 pounds. He's explosive, massive length. He could be a really exciting long-term right tackle answer. Daniel Faalele, the kid who's almost 400 pounds from Minnesota, his size scares me. For that size, he's an incredible athlete, like a dancing bear type. But how sustainable is that? Centers, there's some interesting centers, but the best ones are gone. The Seahawks really liked Cole Strange, and there were a lot of reports that they'd be interested in taking him in the third round, if not the second. Kid out of Chattanooga, small school kid, hasn't played a lot of center, but projects well there, looked good at the Senior Bowl playing center. But the New England Patriots took him in the 20s tonight. Kind of the shocker of the first round. A lot of bad draft grades for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots tonight for taking Cole Strange that high. None of the centers get me that excited, but Raymond does. And that's the direction I'm going to go. As much as I like David Bell, you have an opportunity to lock down your bookends for years with ascending players, with elite strength and athleticism. Let's take Bernard Raymond and lock him in at right tackle for the next few years. Now we're at 98. I want to go back and look at skill positions again. Wide receiver, a couple interesting guys. Running back, a couple interesting guys. Tyler Algier out of BYU. Doesn't have the top end speed, but a very productive runner. Real versatile. He's the size Seahawks like. Good inside-outside runner. James Cook out of Georgia is interesting. He's a little different than what we have. Dalvin Cook's little brother. A little smaller than the Seahawks typically like, 5'11", 199. But I don't think he'd be a guy that you would take to be your every down back. But a really nice change of pace from Rashad Penny. Brian Robinson Jr., a guy out of Alabama that's massive. 6'1", 225. I don't see a lot of creativity or a lot of instincts there. Kind of a straight ahead, straight up and down runner. Damian Pierce out of Florida. big, strong. I mean, 5'9", but 218, kind of that Thomas Rawls type build, but runs bigger than that, looks bigger on tape, real physical runner, was among the league leaders in college football last year in explosive runs, which the Seahawks like, but I think he's going to be there a little bit longer too. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir. The only knock on him, kid from Boise State, is short arms. But some people think he has the best hands in the draft, and a real shifty, very productive player. So we can consider that. Let's go back to defense. So we've got a corner. We've got our edge player. Let's look at outside linebacker. Unfortunately, Channing Tindall is gone. That makes me sad because I couldn't get Troy Anderson, couldn't get Channing Tindall. But Terrell Bernard is a guy that intrigues me as well. 6 foot 224. Clearly, he's a will. He's an outside linebacker, guy that excels in coverage, can run sideline to sideline. Explosive athlete, different than what they have right now. Not a guy that's going to rush the passer, but a guy that's going to play in coverage. Defensive tackle, none of those guys really excite me. There's some fun safeties. Let's go with Khalil Shakir for a couple reasons. I think he's an explosive player. He's a little different than they have. He's a little different than Tyler Lockett and D. Eskridge, and certainly different than DK Metcalf. But a guy that's been uber productive, outstanding hands, runs good routes, works well in the middle of the field. Think he'd be a really good fit in that Shane Waldron offense. And plus, I'm looking at it this way. The Seahawks are going to take skill position guys when you don't think they will, and sometimes when you don't want them to. Now we're in the 4th round. We're at 109. Just wanted to check and see if any of the quarterbacks had fallen. They hadn't. This might be where they go running back now. Let's go Dameon Pierce, because that's a kid that I think really fits what the Seahawks look for. Physical runner, and I think he can develop and be a 3-down guy that can need some development in his 3rd down game, but I think he can get there. Let's take a look at the centers again, and this is where I absolutely think you're going to get some value here. Alec Lindstrom. He's a little undersized, seems like it. 6'3", 296. But he's a technician. Runs in his family. His brother was drafted in the 1st round a couple years ago. 3-year starter for Boston College, so lots of experience, lots of snaps. Really smart, heady player. Knows how to make the calls and run the line. He's played center for a long time. Can he add some weight? Yeah, probably 6'3", 296. But the Seahawks kind of like this build. Austin Blythe, almost the exact same build. In that outside zone scheme, this works. And I think a guy like Alec Lindstrom can be a long-term center, and wouldn't have to play as a rookie. You wouldn't be counting on him to play. But I want to get him in the program. Now we're in the 5th round. We have 2 picks here. We're at 145. Take a look at the overall board. And this is exciting. So there's a couple of kids here. You can see on the screen if you're watching on the stream. I want to take a project because now he doesn't have to play. Right? You've taken Kyler Gordon. You've got Sidney Jones. You have Trey Brown. You signed Artie Burns. Corner looks a lot better now after the Gordon pick. But what about a 6'4" or 6'2", 199-pound guy with long arms who excels in press coverage, but he played at a small school, so he just needs a little seasoning. Zion McCollum has Seahawk corner written all over him, doesn't he? I'm going to take him there. Now we're at 153. We're going to reject this trade offer. Let's take a look at the overall board again. And this is where I want to go Terrell Bernard. Again, a little different than what they have at linebacker. More of a run and chase and cover sideline to sideline guy in that new 3-4 scheme they're going to play. And because we made that one trade where we traded up from the 7th round, that's it. So this is our haul. Charles Cross in the pick number 9. We stayed there and took him. Boye Mafe, edge out of Minnesota at 40. Kyler Gordon, corner at 52. Bernard Raymond, offensive tackle at 72. Khalil Shakir at 98. Eric Briggs is going to love this pick. Dameon Pierce, running back out of Florida at 109. Alec Lindstrom, center, Boston College at 138. Zion McCollum, corner, Sam Houston State at 145. Just gives you an idea of what they could do now still with the draft. But here's a little something I want to throw at you. So who was the 4th round pick? It was Shakir, right? 40, 50, or was it Raymond? There is a report that a couple of days ago that's made the rounds that Baker Mayfield can be had for a 4th-round pick, and that the Cleveland Browns would offset some of his money, that $18.5 million guaranteed that you would take on by trading for him. If the Seahawks were to work a draft board similar to this, would it be the Raymond pick they'd have to give up? No, that's your 3rd rounder. It'd be Shakir. Taking a receiver in the 4th round is a luxury the Seahawks can do without. Take this draft board, plug Baker Mayfield in at 98. And how do you feel about this 2022 roster? Your offensive line is going to be better. Your backfield is going to be better. You've got 2 of the best receivers in the league. Your tight end room is really exciting. Your defense is a new scheme. And you've added more explosive youth on the edge. You've added more talent in the secondary. You brought back your safety tandem. You've got one of the most exciting young inside linebackers in the league in Jordan Brooks. Cody Barton looked great playing for Bobby Wagner the last couple of games of last year. You've added Nwosu in free agency, a guy that can get off the edge. Suddenly, you had a healthy and motivated Baker Mayfield to that roster. And the idea that the Seahawks are going to go 7-10, 6-11, have a top 10 pick again next year, I don't know. That's a team that can be pretty damn competitive. Interested to know what many of you would want to do. Would you rather go with this draft board, take the young receiver, and let Drew Lock take his shots this year and wait until next year when you have 2 firsts and 2 seconds to take a shot at a quarterback in the draft to build around? Or would you give Baker Mayfield a shot to compete with Lock? I mean, who are we kidding? He would beat out Lock for sure. It's an interesting scenario. And I think we'll know if those reports are accurate when we get out of the 2nd round. If the Seahawks take Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell, they're not going to trade another pick for Baker Mayfield. They've made a decision at that point. And I wouldn't be mad if they did that. If they use 40 or 41 on Ridder, I know Colby Patnode would be happy. And I'd have to get him on the show and we'd have a big discussion about that. But Matt Corral, Sam Howell, if Malik Willis fell that far, certainly that would be something to consider. But I think what you're going to see is someone's going to trade up. Because let's take a look at the teams at the top of the 2nd. Well, I don't have it in front of me. We're not going to go into that. But anyway, that gives you an idea what they could do tomorrow. Lots and lots of talented players left. Lots of talented players. And it'll be interesting to see if the Seahawks let the draft come to them, because they do have multiple needs left to fill, or if they try to move around and force something. They do, as much as they trade down early, that's their history. They've made some notable trades up in the 2nd and 3rd round to get guys. Cody Barton's an example. DK Metcalf is an example. Darrell Taylor 2 years ago is an example. So anyway, that's going to do it for me. My thoughts on Charles Cross at number 9. 4 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow, I think, is when the 2nd and 3rd rounds begin. And then Saturday, it's during the day. I'll have some interesting insight. Whether I do a show tomorrow night or not, who we kidding? I probably will, because we'll have 3 picks tomorrow at least. And I'm going to be at the VMAC tomorrow. I'm going to actually be at the VMAC tomorrow, hanging out with a bunch of people and watching the draft and making some drinks. So maybe I'll hear some stuff. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Lots more to get to. 2nd and 3rd rounds tomorrow. You'll get my reaction to it one way or another. Tune back in tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you're watching the stream so you get notifications, or on whatever podcast platform that you listen to. And if you don't follow me on Twitter, you're making a huge mistake in your life. You're just not living properly. At Seahawks Forever. Interact with me. Let me know what you think of this draft scenario, what you want to see them do the rest of the draft. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Go Hawks.